You're trapped in a room with two doors, with one marked live and the other one marked die. Only one of these doors leads to the next room, and if you choose the wrong one, you get shot in the head with a laser. There's also a time limit for choosing, and if you don't pick the right door in time, the floor bursts into flames. You and your friends have to keep on picking the right door for every room until you make it out of the exit of the building. This is the premise of the first game in Netflix's Alice in Borderland. I'm not going to go too in depth on the story, but spoiler, it's really good and I highly recommend you watch it. This video is going to focus more on the game itself, going in depth on logically how to make the right choice in each room and survive the death games if you were actually in the situation. Basically, Alice in Borderland takes place in dystopian Tokyo, where we follow our protagonist Arisu, who's a reclusive gamer living at his parents' house. He's very smart and detail-oriented, and we can see geometry theory books and lots of trivia about topics such as cars all around his room. This man is clearly a different breed. But one day, almost everyone in Tokyo disappears, leaving the people who are left to compete in twisted games named after poker cards.
Game, dead or alive. Difficulty, 3 of clubs.
This new death game version of Tokyo is called the Borderlands, and beating the games adds days to your visa for this country equal to the card number of the game that you beat, from 1 to 13 days. If you run out of days, you die. If you back out of the games, you die. And if you do play the games, you will also probably die. Arisu and his friends don't know any of this yet, and they stumble into an abandoned building that has the first game shown in the series, which is the 3 of Clubs game. They encounter Sayori, who I will from now on call Sus Girl, and a high school girl, who also doesn't know what's going on. They're told the rules of the game and take the elevator up to the first room. This is the first game for everyone except Sus Girl, so they're all very confused, and Sus Girl tells the high school girl to pick the live door because obviously they want to live, right? The time pressure eventually gets to high school girl and she opens that door and bam, she dead. So they all hurry off onto the next room before they're burned to death. And obviously, since this whole laser death thing is mildly distressing to my boys, they all start arguing with Sus Girl on who should take the life or death risk and open the next door. Kurube, being an absolute Chad, takes one for the team and luckily picks the right door for the second room, but they know they won't make it far if they don't figure out something quick. For Arisu, puzzles like this are his specialty, and he figures out a plan for picking the right doors that is actually pretty well explained in the show, but it does go by pretty fast, so I thought I'd explain each step in depth and maybe even improve a bit on it. Now, the solution to this death game is actually really interesting, and it helps to understand the nature of the game itself. Though since this game takes place in the first episode, the players don't yet know what the playing card 3 of Clubs means. In the Borderlands universe of the show, the suit corresponds to the type of game, while the number represents the difficulty. Spades are games related to physical activity and often combat. Diamonds are games that require intelligence and logic, and hearts are games about psychology, ones that often involve trust and betrayal between the players. Clubs games, like the one in this episode, are more teamwork based and involve a mix of the traits needed for the other 3 types of games. Since the life or death door game is a 3 of Clubs, this just means it's considered a relatively easy teamwork game. An initial solution that you might come up with is to just guess for the choice of doors in every room. Since we eventually find out that there are 8 rooms, this means you have about 1 in 256 chance of surviving by guessing randomly, or about 0.3%. So yeah, you're pretty f***ed. This is a plan that Kirube proposes in the episode, with each person taking turns opening the next door. But when they enter the building, we can see that there are 8 phones available, meaning that there can only be a maximum of 8 people playing. So technically, they could all still die even with taking turns. This probably isn't too smart, but luckily our main character, Arisu, comes up with a better solution. With his extensive knowledge of COD and Rubik's Cubes, he figures out a way to deduce the correct door at each step. Now, I say that jokingly, but I actually really like the way they showed his thought process in the show. He starts off by saying BMW 523, and nobody knows what the he's talking about. It turns out that he saw the model of car parked outside the building, and also knows the length of the car, which is just under 5 meters. Since he saw that the length of the building was about 4 of those cars, he estimates that the building is about 20 meters in length. Arisu also glimpses the floor plan when they enter the building, which gives him a lot to work with. First of all, the plan is a square, and since they went up in the elevator, and the building has normal flat walls, like we can see from the outside, this floor as a whole that they're on right now must also be a square, even if the rooms don't match up exactly with the floor plan of the lower floor. In case you guys were confused about that, because I definitely was. We can see that the exits of the buildings are here and here, and that they started from the elevator here, which opened up to the first room. Inside the room, Arisu measures the length of the room using his feet, and finds that it's about 6 meters in length. Since the whole building has a length of 20 meters, there can only fit 3 rooms side by side, which makes sense with the extra space being walls or something. Since all the rooms so far, including this one, have been square rooms, and the whole floor is a square, he deduces that the rooms are probably arranged in a 3x3 layout. Arisu quickly draws up a layout of the rooms they've been in, noting the room they started off with and the room the first girl died in to the right, and the other rooms they've entered. He figures out the third room's door is die from the floor plan, because the live door only leads to this edge of the building where there's no exit. He uses a similar process of elimination for the 4th room as well. Since the second room's door answer was live, the die door must have led to a death room, which is the room currently on the right from where they came in, and also that the one that the live door in this room leads to. This means that the die door is the correct answer, and so our heroes make it safely to the next room. The cinematography in this show is really great. The 360-degree shots were a bit disorienting, but they show which walls each of the live and die doors were on. In each room, the correct doors are actually on the correct walls. Believe me, I actually went back and checked. This was really great because they didn't have to show us every detail. And I'm sure a lot of us would not have noticed, but they shoot the scene such that the viewer can actually deduce the right door on their own once they have the measurements and the floor plan, just from watching the show. This room, the right corner room, has a live door that leads to another dead end that's not an exit. So Arisu figures out it must be a trap and chooses the die door, bringing them safely to the next room. This room's die door leads to a previously checked off trap, so they choose the live door and make it to the second to last room. Now, Arisu's about to absolutely body this room too, until he sees something weird about the doors. The die door on the left seems to lead to the outside of the building, but Arisu notices that when entering, the right side of the building was connected to another one with no gap in between, which is exactly where the die door would lead into. This means that there isn't actually an exit in that end of the building, and so it's probably a trap. But the live door doesn't make sense either. If the room is 3x3, this door would lead back to the room where the first girl died. Naturally, this is pretty confusing. He asks Chota to show him the video that he took on his phone of the room that the high school girl died in, and sees that the wall opposite that door, which is the wall that the current room's death door should be on, doesn't have the other side of that door on that side of the wall. This means that there must be a room in between this one and the one that the high school girl died in. So he chooses that door, which leads them to a small hallway leading to the exit of the building. And there's just one last choice of doors here. Going by the floor plan, since they entered from here, the door on their left must lead to the exit, so the final answer must be the die door. What I find absolutely hilarious about this scene is that the game makers put an exit sign on the other door just to mess with you. Honestly, humans are incredibly visual creatures, and since you only have about 10 seconds to make a decision in this room, many of us would probably run that way out of instinct. It's like making through all these tests and all these rooms just to mess up at the very end because of that sign and die. It's actually pretty mean. Luckily for them, Arisu knows this, so he leads them through the die door and safely into the emergency exit staircase. Some final thoughts. This game was actually developed for the Netflix adaptation, and therefore doesn't have any source material from the manga to work with, which had a completely different game for the Three of Clubs. I've seen mixed opinions on this game, but I think it was a great introduction to the concepts of the Borderland death games, explaining the rules and stakes in a way that's easy to understand. An escape room with a simple choice of 2 doors. It does a great job of showing how brutal these games are, but also that there's some deeper meaning to them, some way to beat the system as long as you're perceptive enough. Choosing a clubs game as the first game not only shows off some teamwork elements, but also hints at what future games of other suits might be like. There's definitely intellectual logic of diamonds here, and some hearts like betrayal elements, as they essentially have to choose a sacrifice to open a door for each room, if they go in blindly. It's a great choice for those new to the series, and fleshes out Arisu quite a bit as a character. His solution scenes aren't over the top, they actually seem pretty believable, and again, the series does give you all the clues that you, as a viewer, need to solve it along with him. It also shows character traits, like his perceptiveness and ability to keep a cool head under pressure. Props to Netflix for coming up with this as their first episode of the series. Believe it or not, this is actually one of the most straightforward games in the series, and the other ones just progressively become more and more interesting. I'm not exactly sure if there's a fail-safe way to beat this Three of Clubs game, but if you did find something I missed, or would solve the game in a different way, let me know in the comments. I'd definitely love to know. Anyways, this was a very enjoyable episode, and I'm looking forward to diving deeper into the other games of the series.